Hey, my friends, Dan Deegan here. Today we're going to talk about how you get 93% of your prospects to convert using two simple strategies. So over the last 27 years that I've been selling in the logistics and freight market, I've realized that there's just two things that help us convert at higher rates than you've ever thought possible. You know, a 93% conversion rate. Whoever thought that would be possible? The thing is, when we talk about conversion rates, when we talk about bringing customers in certain parts of the business, we have to understand it's all about that right customer. So the number one thing that we need to do in any situation is connect with your ideal client. That means creating a bulletproof client profile. Now, let me explain to you exactly what a bulletproof client profile means, right? So in every market, I don't care what market it is, there's a specific individual that's right for you. This is your ideal client. Okay, so your ideal client has specific traits, desires, needs. Okay, so let's say you're talking about you want to do relationships, right? And your ideal client doesn't necessarily, money is a factor, but it's not the biggest, right? Now, let's say also that you want to deal with, say, a family person. You know, maybe you're sitting there and you're saying to yourself, okay, well, I deal best with people that can relate to me because I have children, they have children, that type of thing. That's when I say family person, it's kind of what I'm talking about, okay? So then let's say, for example, on the other side of it, you want to deal with somebody that has no ego about help, right? Because here's the thing, we as sales reps are coming into somebody's world and essentially, for lack of a better term, we're saying, we can do it better, or we can help you streamline it. When we're walking into their world and saying, hey, you know that job that you've done over the last however many years, I can do it better, right? So maybe we have to identify and 8-mile the strategy of, hey, no ego. I'm really looking for somebody that can say, yeah, I need help. And so here's the thing. I'll give you a perfect example, a short story here. Right, so in my business, I look for executive vice presidents, vice president of sales, CEOs that can step out of the way and say, hey, yeah, you know what? I know I'm a vice president of sales, but this person has some pretty cool strategies and tactics. I want to give my team every opportunity to connect and get that aha moment, right? So my ideal customer, my ideal prospect, my bulletproof customer profile is one of an individual that doesn't necessarily, they don't have an ego about bringing a sales trainer into their business. So your customer, your prospect, when I say ego, he or she doesn't have an ego about bringing somebody else in and saying, hey, look at it from a different set of eyes. Can you help? That's what I mean by ego, okay? So then we go back to it and we say, okay, so I understand that I want somebody who's built on relationships. I got that. Now, I understand money is not the biggest issue. Money usually, and especially now with inflation and everything, money will come into play. Okay. Now, I want a family person. I want somebody that's going to understand what life is like to have a family because, you know what? Maybe in the end, I'll connect with them better. I'll have a better relationship with them if we are on the same level, right? So that makes sense. Okay. So now we go into another one, and then the opportunity to grow, right? So let's say these are your top five points that you want from a customer. So what you do is you build a bulletproof client profile around those 5 points. So this isn't really a training video on building a client profile. I will do one for you in the future, but in essence, what you do is you take all of these and you wrap them up into a series of questions that's going to help you identify all of this. So, for number one, for example, it's very simply, are you a relationship or money person? Now, let's say, for example, you ask that question as your number one question. You know what, Mr. Prospect? And obviously you have to add context to everything you do. Mr. Prospect, I work best with people that believe in long-term relationships, that believe in our ability to serve each other at the highest levels for 5, 10, 15 years. Are you a relationship person, or are you more like, is your company based on, and not necessarily calling them out, but based on kind of your mandates and your objectives? Are you more of a person that is looking after a dollar bill right now? That would be the question that I would ask them. So then we go back to, if we ask this question, we've actually now cornered off these two with this one question here. This first question is taking care of this. Hey, do you have a family? There we go. Now, this question might actually might not necessarily drive you on the first call. So this family person thing that we talked about, right? Like if we look at an order of the way these should flow, is relationships would be number one, money would be number two, ego would be number three, maybe a family person would go down here and be number four, and then is there an ability to grow might be number five on your priority list of building a client profile, right? So now that we understand that, we say, okay, number one is relationships. So what we have to do is the first thing we should do, the first thing we should do if you really want to convert at a 90% plus rate is we want to identify, is this person built on relationships or are they built on money? That answers our top two. Then number three is, okay, when we're having a conversation, do you feel like there's ego in the way? And if you can connect with your top three bulletproof client profile must-haves, it brings us right into the second thing you must have, which is follow up with the right message. Now, here's the thing. If we don't follow up with the right message, we're like ships passing in the wind, right? The reality is that for what we do, how we do it, the fact that nowadays it takes 6+ connections, 6 times in connecting with a prospect to even come close to closing a deal. So if we don't follow up with precision, if we don't follow up with the right message delivered to the right person, we lose. And what I mean by that is if you go back and you look at your client profile and you say, okay, relationships is number one. And if you, for example, identify with this customer that, yes, my number one thing is relationships, okay, then your follow-up process, when you actually go in and you start following up with this customer, your follow-up process then becomes all about relationships, right? So you say, okay, you can send an article, right? You can share a great blog. And these are all in between your calls. So say this is a scheduled call and this is a scheduled call. Then I should really do like a calendar instead of an email, but you get the hint. So if these are 2 scheduled calls on your calendar, in between those calls, we would send out an email. And we would give our customers, our prospect at this point, the ability to, maybe this is a social post, right? So we would give them the ability in between our meetings to give them, in essence, give them content based on what they believe, they see, and they like to hear about, which is relationships, okay? Then what we would do is as we go through this, and I might be running out of room here. Okay, so we got small boxes on the end here. But so as we go through this, we say, okay, we're going to send them another email on price over dedication, right? And why would we do something like that? Well, because if we send them an email about an article from like a Forbes magazine, an Inc. magazine, you're borrowing authority from those magazines, you're borrowing credibility from those magazines, talking about what we talked about or the ideal client profile that you have this customer associated with that they believe is right too, which is, hey, relationships pay you dividends compared to, say, spot market or non-relationships. When shit hits the fan, when things go bad, relationships are all that matter, right? So these are the articles, and that is why when you're in your sales call, like when you're having your first sales call, right? I don't even know if that's it. It's off the table anyway, so here we go. We'll just cross out that really horrible phone. So you're talking about relationships, you're talking about money not being the biggest thing, you're talking about no ego, right? You can send articles in here and over here about, management outsourcing for a better result, right? So you're saying, okay, you're corresponding with all of these points in these articles. That's how you deliver the right message to the right person, right? So, and so think of it like this, if you call up a prospect, right? and you go and without inquiring, you just jump right into, you know what, we've been able as a corporation, as my department, we've been able to serve customers at the highest level, build really solid relationships with them and help them through the capacity crunches. And your prospect is thinking in his head, I don't care about relationships. I just want the cheapest rate. You miss the conversation. It never, it just misses. Right? Or if you go in and you say, hey, you know what? I'm that guy when you need cheap freight. Like, I understand cost of inflation, everything's going up. You know what, Mr. Prospect? I can get things done cheaper than you're getting it done now. But the prospect has tried cheap and cheap never worked because cheap ended up being more expensive in the long run from service failures and all this other stuff. Then what have you done again? You've just completely crushed your opportunity to see them eye to eye, right? The customer profile brings us eye to eye. The follow-up, and when I talk follow-up with the right message, the follow-up between follow-up, the if I do this, will you do that framework, all these other frameworks that I teach, now what happens is every communication hits. And that's how a relationship is built. That's how you get 93+% close rates. Here's the caveat, okay? If you do not have a bulletproof client profile, you will not always bring the right people on the bus. The strategy, the idea is to bring the right people into your world that are going to convert. When you have an ideal client profile, you develop questions. So write down today, right now, when you pause this video, pause it even, or when you're done this video, write this down. The top 5 things your ideal customer, traits, characteristics, beliefs that you have, that you want to deal with. When you close your eyes and you picture your perfect business, what are the top 5 things this person must have? Then what you do is you set out to ask your first, second, third, and fourth questions, your qualifying question, clarifying question, qualifying question, expert story positioning. You've seen that framework, QC ESP framework. If you haven't seen it, make sure you leave a comment, make sure you DM me, and I'll get it to you. So that framework allows you to formulate your Q&A when you're investigating on that investigative call about your client profile to figure out, is this person right for me? Because when that person's right for you and you bring them into your world, you will close 90+% of them, for sure, 100%. The only reason you wouldn't is if something happened in the business, and unfortunately, freight's moving right now, Dan, but we got to put this on the back burner for a minute. No problem. Doesn't mean they're not your ideal client. It's just something's taken priority. And we as logistics freight agents, freight brokers, we sometimes don't see that. We sometimes can't see past the value, the solution, the opportunity that we can bring to the table, right? So just see past that. And then, so number 1, again, right? We'll go through them one more time. Bulletproof client profile. Number 2, follow up with the right message. Following up with the right message is the key to your next level productivity. There you have it, my friends. If you like this video, please do me a favor, subscribe, hit the subscribe button, bell, hit the icon, get notified when new videos go live. We do a video every week on sales training and logistics and sales professionals. Hey, if you want a deeper dive into strategies like this, then in the comments below, register for my Sell Something Else Masterclass. This Masterclass we're doing twice a day, 5 days a week. So there's going to be a time over the next week or two that suits you. And this Masterclass will discover the 3 things everyone buys that's not freight, not capacity, and not rates. We'll talk to you later. Have a great day.